In front of a packed auditorium in downtown Chicago, the night exploded the moment Donald Trump tried to humiliate Barack Obama with his tired birther lies and loyalty attacks, only for Obama to calmly look him dead in the eye and rip the mask off his hypocrisy in one devastating sentence, exposing the shocking truth about how Trump had spoken about his own daughter in ways that made the entire room gasp in disgust. This was no ordinary political rally or debate. It was billed as an honest conversation about America's future, a rare town hall-style event where former President Barack Obama and President Donald Trump had agreed to speak directly to everyday Americans about the biggest challenges facing the country: jobs, health care, education, and climate change. But from the moment the two men walked onto the stage, the tension was palpable. Barack Obama stepped onto the stage without fanfare. No dramatic music, no waving flags, just a man in a dark suit walking to the podium under warm lights. The crowd quieted down almost immediately. He looked out at them for a moment, then started speaking in that calm, steady voice everyone remembered. "Tonight I want to talk about what's really happening in this country," he began. "Not with fancy numbers or political slogans, but with the stories I keep hearing from people like you." He told them about a single mom in Detroit. She worked double shifts at a diner, feet aching every night, but still couldn't keep up with the rent that kept climbing. Some months she had to choose between groceries and the electric bill. Obama's voice stayed even, but the weight of her struggle hung in the air. Then he spoke about a father in Ohio who had spent 20 years on a factory line. One day the plant shut down. The new job he found paid half as much. He came home every evening wondering how he was supposed to look his kids in the eye and tell them things would get better. These weren't just sad stories. They were the daily reality for millions. Obama didn't raise his voice or pound the podium. He simply laid the truth out there that when families are squeezed like this, the whole country feels the pain. A few people in the front row nodded slowly. You could see the recognition in their eyes. He moved on without pausing long. "Now let's talk about the planet we're leaving behind." His tone grew a little heavier. He described farmers watching their fields dry up or get wiped out by storms that used to come once in a lifetime. He talked about small towns on the coast where the water was slowly swallowing streets and homes. Out west, families packed up every summer, ready to run from wildfires that seemed to burn hotter and longer each year. Obama didn't sound like he was scaring people. He spoke like a dad thinking about his own daughter's future. The good news is, the solutions are right here if we're willing to reach for them together. Next, he turned to healthcare, and the room grew even quieter. He told them about an elderly couple in Pennsylvania who had to split their pills in half because they couldn't afford the full prescription. He mentioned a young mother who drove 2 hours each way just to get her sick child to a specialist. In the richest country on earth, he said, no one should have to decide between medicine and dinner. The Affordable Care Act had helped, but it wasn't enough. People still went bankrupt over hospital bills. Obama looked straight at the crowd and said it plainly, "We can do better than this." Then he spoke about education, and his voice softened. He shared the story of a young girl he had met years ago in a small town. She dreamed of becoming a scientist, but her school had no lab, old textbooks, and spotty internet. Still, that spark in her eyes never went out. She didn't need pity, Obama said. She needed a real chance. When we give our kids the tools, they surprise us every single time. He called teachers the unsung heroes, underpaid, overworked, but still showing up every day believing their students could do great things. For a moment, the entire hall seemed to hold its breath. Obama paused and looked slowly across the faces in front of him. His voice dropped just a little. I know these problems feel overwhelming sometimes. I know a lot of you are tired of broken promises, tired of the fighting, tired of wondering if anything will ever change. But here's what I still believe. He let the words settle before continuing. We still believe in each other. We still believe this country can live up to its promise if we refuse to give up. Through wars, through hard times, through everything we've faced, we've kept moving forward because we chose hope over fear and unity over hate. The silence in the room was complete. No one coughed. No one shifted in their seat. Then the applause started, quiet at first, then stronger. It wasn't wild cheering. It was the kind of steady clapping that comes when people feel truly seen and heard. Obama gave a small nod, waiting for it to settle. Obama took a small step closer to the microphone. The applause had died down, and the room felt calm again, almost hopeful. He looked out at the faces in front of him and started to speak. These problems won't fix themselves overnight, he said evenly. They won't be solved by one president or one party. They'll be solved when millions of us choose to put honesty over fear and work together. That's what real unity looks like. Not just a word we throw around, but a responsibility we all carry. We can disagree on policy, but we don't have to treat each other like enemies. Our kids deserve better than that. Our country deserves better. He paused for half a second, ready to lay out some practical steps on jobs, healthcare, and schools. The audience leaned in, waiting. Then a sharp, loud voice sliced right through the quiet like a slap. "Barack!" Everyone froze. Heads turned fast toward the side of the stage, where Donald Trump sat at his own microphone. His face was tight, eyes narrowed, that familiar scowl locked in place. He leaned forward, gripping the mic hard. "You talk a good game about unity and hope," Trump said, his voice rising, sharp and angry. "But let's be honest here. There are still a lot of questions about where you really come from. People deserve to know if the man standing up here talking about loving America actually loves this country at all." Gasps rippled through the crowd. A few people shifted uncomfortably in their seats. Trump didn't stop. His words came faster, louder. "You've never been straight about your birth certificate. Never really proved you were born here. And while we're at it, let's talk about loyalty. You went around the world apologizing for America. You bowed to foreign leaders like you were ashamed. You sided with people who don't even respect our flag. So tell me, Barack, what kind of American does that?" The air in the hall turned thick. Some folks whispered angrily. Others just sat there stunned, mouths slightly open. This was the same old birther nonsense that had been debunked years ago, but Trump was dragging it back out right here, in front of everyone, turning a serious night into a personal attack. Trump leaned back a little, looking satisfied, like he'd just landed a solid punch. His voice got even louder. "You talk about unity, but maybe you should start by being honest about yourself. How can the American people trust someone who's not even proud to be one of us? You don't love this country, that's the truth." He said it again for emphasis, almost spitting the words, "You don't love this country." The room went dead silent. No one moved. A woman in the third row let out a quiet groan. A couple of people shook their heads in disbelief. The hopeful feeling from just moments ago had vanished. Now the air felt heavy, electric, like right before a storm breaks. All eyes locked on Obama. He stood completely still behind the podium. His face didn't change. No anger, no shock, nothing. He just looked straight at Trump, calm and steady, like he was studying him. The silence stretched on. 10 seconds, 15, 20. It felt longer than it should have. You could hear the faint hum of the lights overhead. Someone in the back cleared their throat nervously. Trump waited, expecting Obama to snap back, to get defensive, to lose his cool. But Obama gave him nothing. He didn't frown. He didn't shift his weight. He didn't even blink fast. That quiet stare just hung there, heavy and unbreakable. The longer the silence lasted, the more uncomfortable Trump seemed to get. His fingers tightened around the microphone. His usual smirk started to slip. Obama finally broke the silence. He didn't raise his voice. He didn't lean forward or point a finger. He just spoke in that same calm, steady tone, like he was stating a simple fact. "I have proof," he said evenly, looking straight at Trump. "You're involved with your own daughter. That's shameful." The words landed like a hammer. The entire hall went ice cold. For a split second, nobody breathed. Then a wave of shock rolled through the crowd. People sat up straight. Some gasped out loud. A few covered their mouths with their hands. No one had expected that. Trump froze in his chair. His mouth hung slightly open. The confident smirk he'd been wearing disappeared completely. His face turned pale, then flushed red in patches. He looked like someone had just slapped him across the face. Obama kept going, his voice still quiet, but crystal clear. "Back in 2006 on the Howard Stern show, you said, and I quote, 'If Ivanka weren't my daughter, perhaps I'd be dating her.' You laughed about it then. The rest of the country didn't. And that wasn't the only time. In 2004, you spoke about your daughter's appearance in ways that crossed every line of basic decency. Every parent in this country knows what real love for a daughter looks like. It doesn't look like that." The room was stunned silent. You could hear the faint rustle of clothes as people shifted uncomfortably. A young woman in the middle row looked like she might cry. An older man near the front shook his head slowly, his face tight with disgust. The weight of those old quotes hung in the air, heavy and ugly. Trump's hands gripped the edges of his seat. His knuckles went white. For the first time that night, he looked completely off balance. His usual bluster was gone. He stared at Obama like he couldn't believe what he was hearing. Then he exploded. "That's AI!" Trump shouted, his voice cracking with anger. "It's fake news! Those interviews were fake, totally made up." He slammed his hand down for emphasis, leaning into the microphone. "You're lying, Barack, just like always." Obama didn't flinch. He looked Trump dead in the eye and answered right back, calm and direct. "There was no AI in 2004 or 2006, Mr. President. Those were your own words on live radio. The world heard them then, and they remember them now. You can call it fake all you want, but the tapes don't lie." The hall erupted. A loud collective gasp swept through the crowd, followed by a burst of noise. Some people shot to their feet. Others clapped hard, the sound sharp and sudden. A few shouted, "That's right," from the back. The tension that had been building finally broke open. It wasn't wild cheering. It was raw, shocked reaction. People were fed up with the personal attacks, and Obama had just flipped the script in one clean move. Trump looked rattled. His eyes darted around the room, searching for support that wasn't there. He opened his mouth again, but the words came out messy and defensive. "You're twisting everything. This is a witch hunt. Fake. All of it fake." His voice sounded higher than usual, almost frantic. He kept repeating fake, like saying it louder would make it true. But the more he shouted, the more the crowd seemed to pull away from him. A few people near the stage even started booing softly. Obama stood perfectly still behind the podium. He didn't smile. He didn't gloat. He simply let the moment breathe, letting Trump's own panic fill the space. The man who had tried to trap him with lies was now the one cornered by his own past. Trump wasn't backing down. His face had gone from pale to deep red, and his eyes were burning with anger. He jabbed a finger toward Obama and raised his voice even louder. "You're lying again, Barack. Just like you've lied your whole damn life," he shouted. "This is the same old nonsense. You're making things up to cover your own weaknesses. Nobody believes this crap." The words came out fast and ugly. Trump leaned so far forward that his microphone nearly tipped over. He kept going, doubling down hard. "You think you can smear me with fake stories, and everyone's just going to sit here and take it? I built this country. I made it great. And you're You're still the same guy who hid who he really is. Pathetic. The hall was buzzing now. Some people muttered in agreement with Trump, while others looked disgusted. The energy had turned raw and unpredictable. Obama waited a beat, then answered without raising his voice at all. His tone stayed calm, but every word cut like a knife. "Mr. President, let's stick to the facts," he said. The 2006 interview happened on October 13th on The Howard Stern Show. You were live on air with Howard Stern and Robin Quivers. You said those exact words about your daughter. The 2004 comments were made publicly during a radio appearance as well. These weren't secret recordings. They were broadcast for millions to hear at the time. People saved the clips. They remember. He spoke slowly and clearly, like he was laying down bricks one by one. No emotion, just cold, hard details. The crowd quieted a little, listening closely. Suddenly, a man in the middle rows stood up. He was in his late 50s, wearing a simple button-down shirt, nothing flashy. He raised his hand slightly so people could see him. "I was there that day," he said, his voice steady and loud enough to carry. "I was the producer on The Howard Stern Show in 2006. I sat in the control room and heard every single word. It wasn't AI, it wasn't fake. It was Donald Trump speaking live on the radio. The room exploded with noise. Heads whipped around. People whispered urgently to each other. A few clapped. Others looked shocked that a real witness had just spoken up. Trump spun toward the man, his face twisted with rage. He pointed a shaking finger straight at him. "Paid actor," Trump bellowed. "This is all staged. He's a paid actor. They brought him in here to lie for you, Barack. This is a setup." His voice cracked with panic. He kept jabbing his finger in the air, repeating "paid actor," like it was a magic phrase that could erase everything. The crowd split right down the middle. Some booed Trump loudly. Others shouted back in his defense. The Qizhao grew into a loud, messy roar. The once orderly hall now felt like it was on the edge of chaos. Obama raised one hand calmly, signaling for quiet. The noise didn't stop completely, but it dropped enough for him to be heard. He turned slightly toward the technical crew at the side of the stage. "Could we bring up the transcript on the main screen, please?" A few seconds later, the large screens behind the podium lit up. Clear black text on a white background appeared. Exact quotes from the old interviews, with dates, show names, and timestamps. The words were impossible to ignore. "If Ivanka weren't my daughter, perhaps I'd be dating her." And right below it, the 2004 comments about his daughter's body and appearance. The entire hall went dead quiet again. Every eye locked onto those giant screens. The second tension peak hit hard. People leaned forward in their seats. Some pulled out phones to take pictures. The proof was right there, big and undeniable, hanging over the stage like a spotlight. Trump stared at the screen, his mouth opening and closing without sound at first. His chest rose and fell fast. He looked trapped, cornered by his own past, right in front of hundreds of people. "You can shout fake all night," Obama said, quietly but firmly. "But the words are yours. The dates are real. The people who heard them are still here. Truth doesn't disappear just because it's inconvenient." The tension in the room was thick enough to taste. Whispers turned into arguments between rows. Some people nodded vigorously at Obama. Others glared at Trump. Trump shot up from his chair so fast it nearly tipped over. His face was beet red, veins bulging on his forehead. He pointed a thick finger straight at Obama, his hand shaking with fury. "You won't get away with this," he screamed, his voice cracking. "This is a witch hunt, a total setup. You and your fake news friends are trying to destroy me, but it's not gonna work." He grabbed the microphone stand like he was about to rip it out. Then he turned sharply, trying to storm off the stage. But the wireless mic was still clipped to his jacket, and every furious word kept blasting through the hall's speakers. "You hear me, Barack? You're finished. This is a disgrace. I won't stand for these lies." His heavy footsteps echoed as he marched toward the side exit. The crowd watched in stunned silence at first. Then the noise started building, some cheering him on, others booing loudly. The whole room felt like it was about to boil over. Obama didn't move. He stayed behind the podium, calm as ever, and spoke in a clear, steady voice that somehow cut through all the chaos. "Those words didn't just hurt your daughter, Mr. President," he said. "They sent a message to every daughter in America. That's the real problem. When a man in power talks about his own child that way, it tells every young woman that her worth can be reduced to how she looks or who she might date. It tells fathers that this kind of talk is somehow okay. It tells families that basic respect and boundaries don't matter. That's not leadership. That's a failure of character." The words landed heavy. Several women in the audience nodded slowly, their faces tight. A few men looked away, uncomfortable. Obama wasn't shouting. He was simply connecting the dots, turning the personal quotes into something bigger and more uncomfortable for everyone in the room. Trump stopped halfway to the exit. He spun back around, eyes wild. "Shut up," he yelled. "Just shut your mouth. None of that is true." Obama looked at the technical crew again and gave a small nod. "Let's play the short clip from 2006, please. Just 30 seconds. The lights dimmed slightly. The big screens flickered, and then the audio filled the hall. Clear, crisp, and unmistakable. It was Trump's own voice from years ago, loud and laughing on the Howard Stern show. "If Ivanka weren't my daughter, perhaps I'd be dating her." The clip ended. The room went completely silent. Not a single cough. Not a whisper. Hundreds of people sat frozen, listening to the ghost of Trump's past words echo through the present. The impact was brutal. It wasn't someone else's accusation anymore. It was his own voice, his own laugh, playing right there for everyone to hear. That was the third explosion of the night. Trump's face turned a deep, angry purple. His hands shook violently as he gripped the microphone. Sweat beaded on his forehead. "Fake!" he screamed at the top of his lungs. "That's fake! All of it! They doctored it! AI! Deep fake! You're all in on this!" He kept repeating, "Fake! Fake!" over and over, his voice getting hoarse and desperate. He pointed wildly at the screens, then at Obama, then at random people in the crowd. His whole body trembled with rage. The man who had walked in so confident now looked completely cornered, unraveling in real time. The audience reaction split wide open. Half the hall erupted in loud boos and shouts of shame. The other half tried to cheer him on, but their voices were drowned out by the growing wave of disapproval. People stood up. Some clapped hard for Obama. Others yelled at Trump to leave. The noise became a chaotic roar. Lay-o mixed with scattered applause. Trump finally turned his back completely. He ripped the mic off his jacket and threw it down. It hit the stage with a loud thud, still picking up his muttering as he stormed off. "This is bullshit, total disaster. They'll pay for this." His voice faded as he disappeared behind the curtain, red-faced and defeated. The heavy stage door slammed shut behind him. The hall fell into a heavy, electric silence. Obama stood perfectly still at the podium. He didn't smile. He didn't celebrate. He simply let the quiet stretch out, giving everyone time to feel what had just happened. The tension in the air was so thick. Obama stood quietly at the podium as the heavy silence lingered. The echoes of Trump's shouting and the slammed door still hung in the air. He took a slow, steady breath and spoke in that same calm, measured voice that had carried him through the entire night. "Tonight," he said, "we saw what happens when volume tries to replace truth, when anger tries to replace accountability. We watched one man attempt to drown out the facts with noise and threats, but facts don't disappear just because they're inconvenient. And leadership isn't measured by how loud you can shout." He paused, letting the words settle over the still shaken crowd. "We came here to talk about real problems facing real families. the single mom in Detroit, working 2 jobs and still falling behind on rent. The father in Ohio, who lost his livelihood and now struggles to provide. Farmers watching their crops die from unpredictable weather. Coastal towns fighting rising seas. Elderly couples forced to split their pills because medicine costs too much. Young mothers driving hours for basic care. And that little girl who dreams of becoming a scientist but sits in a classroom with no lab and no real tools. Obama's voice stayed even, but there was quiet power behind every sentence. These aren't abstract issues. These are the daily struggles of millions of Americans, and solving them requires something more than spectacle or personal attacks. It requires integrity. Real leadership isn't about dominating the stage or winning the argument at any cost. It's about showing up with honesty, even when the truth is uncomfortable. It's about putting people before politics and results before ego. He looked slowly across the hall, making eye contact with as many faces as he could. Tonight we saw the difference. One path leads to division and chaos. The other asks us to do the hard, steady work of building something better. Stronger schools, fairer wages, real health care, and a planet we can pass on to our children without fear. That work doesn't come from the loudest voice in the room. It comes from the steadiest one, the one willing to tell the truth and stand by it. The room remained completely still. No one wanted to miss a word. Obama's tone grew firmer as he delivered his closing thought. True strength is not the loudest voice. It is the one that stands firm in truth, even when it's uncomfortable, even when it costs you something. That is what real leadership looks like. That is what this country has always needed, and what it still needs today. For a long moment, nothing happened. Then the applause began. And in that hall, filled with everyday Americans who had just witnessed a raw test of character, that message rang louder than any shout ever could.